Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hammer Museum. I'm Claudia Bester. I'm the Director of Public Programs here, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to tonight's program with Bruce Talamon and Verdine White. I know, I'm so excited. Before we get started, I want to remind you to please silence your cell phones. And we don't allow video and audio recording, but we are videotaping this, and it will be available on our website by tomorrow. So if you want to share it with your friends, you can email it to them. So tonight we're in for a very, very special treat, an insider's look at one of the most important and influential moments in American musical history with two of the people who experienced it at dead center. Photographer Bruce Talamon spent the 70s capturing R&B, soul, and funk royalty. As a staff photographer for Soul newspaper in Los Angeles, he was on assignment at every performance by black entertainers in the region and captured the glamour and the backstage grit of super musicians like Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Diana Ross, Isaac Hayes, Rick James, Chaka Khan, Patti LaBelle, Bootsy Collins, the Jackson 5, Al Green, Stevie Wonder, and everyone who composed the soundscape of the 70s. He became a popular album photographer for musicians as well and traveled the world on tour with one of the biggest bands of them all, Earth, Wind & Fire. Later, Bruce was a contract photographer for Time magazine in the 80s, and his work also appeared in People, Rolling Stone, Ebony, and Vanity Fair. He also has worked and continues to work extensively in Hollywood films as a still photographer, where he also does poster art and publicity shots on major feature films. You may not realize it, but probably around half of the people in this audience at least already own a Bruce Talamon photograph. Bruce was selected by Bob Marley to be his principal photographer and gave him unprecedented access into his personal life. So all the millions and millions of dorm room walls that were adorned by posters of Bob Marley, that's pretty much guaranteed to be a Bruce Talamon photograph. And those are all compiled now into a book called Bob Marley's Spirit Dancer. The soul, funk, R&B superstars he photographed have recently been turned into a gorgeous exhibition at the Grammy Museum and an incredible new book published by Taschen. And tonight we are celebrating the release of these photographs. There are actually two versions of the book, a collector's edition with limited edition prints included, and a spectacular coffee table book, and both books are available for sale in the theater lobby following the talk. And we'll also have coffee, tea, and cookies. I hope you can join us and mingle and say hello to Bruce and Verdine afterwards. So tonight, Bruce invited one of his favorite subjects to come and talk about their shared history in music. Mr. Verdine White of Earth, Wind & Fire is without a doubt one of the greatest electric bass players of all times. Verdine hails from Chicago, where he started his formal training in his pre-teens studying the upright bass. After performing for several years with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, he began playing the electric bass in local jazz clubs throughout Chicago, where he honed his inimitable style and technique. Then he moved to LA and joined his brother Maurice White in Los Angeles to form one of the most successful pop and R&B bands of all times, Earth, Wind & Fire. For over 35 years, Earth, Wind & Fire's tour and concert performances have taken them all around the world, and I mean everywhere. Their music defined the era with a sound that embodies love and joy and resonates with people of all ages, races, and religions. Verdine is not only a musical genius who created the powerful and memorable bass lines that make the music electric, but on stage his high-octane enthusiasm and energy made him a central driving force in the performances. Earth, Wind & Fire had 16 top 40 singles, won 6 Grammys, and sold an estimated 100 million albums. And it is such a thrill to have him here on the Hammer stage. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Bruce Talamon and Verdine White.
Hey.
Hello. How's everybody? All right, you comfortable? All right, well, maybe we can have some fun this afternoon, this evening.
Good evening, everybody. Hey. Hey. Well, I guess we'll start right here, huh?
All right.
We'll just sort of interview ourselves. We've known, well, I've known Bruce for a long time, and he's done a lot of, really great work, and we were been talking about this book for like 10 years, and originally the genesis of the book was really, him coming with the idea about, photographing this genre of music that really laid the foundation for really all the music now that we're having right now, and it came to fruition. Some of the great people that you'll see on screen here, are people that we actually knew. And so anyway, I wanted to, introduce Bruce Talamon because it was really him traveling around, and Reese, my brother Maurice, brought him on the road, and all that stuff. So Bruce, you can start.
Well, all right. First of all, I'll also say welcome. And this was an interesting time in my career. It was 1972 to 1982. I was there, and maybe along the way I was able to capture a little bit of that magic, because that's what it was. It was magic. And today we're going to show you some, there's a few pictures to look at, and we're going to have a little fun. I've got a clicker here, and so, like I say, it says here a love letter to the music, and that's sort of the way I look at it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things was that I had an opportunity, and everybody, was very gracious wherever I went. And I've got to say, one of my best subjects, one of my most fun subjects, was a fellow named Verdine White, who gave me a lot of great opportunities, great times, as far as visually. But I like to say, I photographed action heroes, right? And before but when I was doing that, when I was photographing action heroes, before that, I photographed R&B royalty. And when I think about that, when I pinch myself sometimes, it's something, I mean, as a young soul-trained dancer said to me when she saw this picture, she says, "You can't stop James Brown's feet, baby." You think about that. You think about that, and you're right. But so like I said, I had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to be at a spot and at a time where I was able to do some nice stuff. And when I think about being with Earth, Wind, and Fire, it really makes me think about what the artist has to give. These guys, when they talk to you about practice, when they talk to you about the work ethic, it's not something that just happens overnight. They got to grind it out. And but as I said, this was at the start of my career, and you might notice the young man in the lower left-hand corner there, and that's one Bruce Talamon, who has no photo pass, no credit, no photo credit pass, and no photo credit at the time, and he's photographing Isaac Hayes, and that was at Wattstacks. Right. That was the first. Coming up, you'll see the first photograph that I ever did of an R&B artist, and that was when I took this particular photograph of Isaac.
Right.
Now here's something interesting.
What?
Do you know who the guitar player was?
Right there.
Working. He's off in the corner. You can't see him, but he was
Al.
That's right.
Al. That was Al.
That's
Al
right.
McKay,
Al
guitar player.
McKay
Right.
from Earth, Wind, and Fire was the was the band coordinator,
And that was Al on Shaft,
and that's right.
that wah-wah guitar. And also, too, it was really the start of all of our careers and the start of really quote-unquote R&B music. And don't forget now, there was no infrastructure. Now we have an infrastructure. The average person knows about the music business. They know that you have a road manager. They know you have trucks. They know you have lights. They know you have all those things. Everybody is sort of an expert. Then you didn't really have any of that. Everybody was sort of making it up as they went along. And they were developing the infrastructures as they went along, because there weren't any. It was like now, when you get a road manager, if you work with somebody, you get a recommendation from another act, and when he gets there, he says, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. That's what they do today. And then back then, if you had a road manager, you say, listen, I need you to come out and work with us. And they said, what am I going to do? Well, you'll find out when you get here. That was the record business then. Right. Because don't forget now, everybody was coming from whatever background they had. Some guys might have started off as security guards. Some people might have started off as hairdressers. And they might have started off because people needed help, and they made it up as they go along. And this actually is the first book of this kind of really African-American music that really photographs the progress, because we've had jazz, we've had rock, we've had ballet, we've had art books, but you've never had a book about African American artists, in the work and in the process. And with,
No, you're
and
right.
with Bruce, we never knew Bruce was there. He was just one of the guys. He was one of the cats, as we call him. He was a photographer, but he was with us. He could talk to us about Coltrane. You could talk to him about Miles Davis. And then if we went to any other concerts like Bob Marley, we'd see Bruce. So he was really like the fifth Beatle, if like the fifth Beatle.
Well, thank you. But I started, like I said, I was given an opportunity, and I had a wonderful champion. I had two champions. I had two people who looked out for me, and one was this wonderful photographer named Howard Bingham, and Howard dropped me. That's right. Howard literally dropped me off on the doorstep of a wonderful lady named Regina Jones, and Regina Jones was the publisher of Soul newspaper,
Right.
and it was one of the only at the time African American music arts magazines, and it really wasn't even a magazine. It was, quite frankly, it was a little newspaper, maybe on a good week, 19 pages,
Right.
But we had access. She gave me access. So, for instance, here is 1974 with a young Michael Jackson and Jermaine and Marlon in the back waiting and watching the Ohio Players burn up the stage. Now, they knew that they had to go out there and do something special, and of course they did. But this is sort of the shell shock. I call this the shell shock photograph. Jermaine's perm has fallen, and look at his eyes. When you really think about it, it's like this is they would run right off the stage, right into the limo.
I know that feeling when the perm falls. I know
Yes,
that.
brother. Yes, brother.
It's happened before. It's happened.
One of the things I was trying to do in the book was to, I don't know, just maybe educate some folks, and one of the things I wanted to that I wanted to say was that before Michael Jackson conquered the world, okay, he belonged to little black girls in Gary, and in Harlem, and in Newark, and in North Carolina, and Atlanta. And, I looked out, I remember, taking this photograph. Look at the joy. Look at the joy on those young girls' faces, because their hero has come to town. and they're there. I would love to try and find some of these young women now, you know. I mean, but that's just another.
But you know what was cool about that was that, you know, like when Michael started and you saw the picture of the young African American teenagers and young girls, and we talk about crossover in the music business. Really, by the time all of us cross over, whether it's the Jacksons or us or anybody, most of African American people kind of already know who we are.
Right.
It's not like unusual, you know. It's just that once we got open up to the masses, the mass culture, you know, that's when everybody got into it. But it was already kind of laid out before. They, you know, like Michael Jackson was already famous with us before he crossed over with, you know, Thriller, or like
No
before
question.
before
Exactly.
we did September Boogie Wonderland, you know, we had, you know, Devotion, we had, you know, Heads of the Sky, you know, we had Spirit. No, you know, so
right.
that wasn't like, you know, there was already you know, the groundwork laid, you know, before, like, you know, we did Got to Get You My Life and things like
That's
that. And the
right.
same with Michael, the same with Higher Players, same with Lionel, because you had the Commodores, you know, when he 3 Times a Lady Now, all those big records. But, you know, he had Zoom, you know, all those
Exactly.
things, you know, all those things that we listened to, you know.
Oh yes.
And you had African American radio that was very
Well, and
prominent,
that's
you know.
yes.
That was a big deal. That was a big deal
that's
before
the other thing.
satellite, you know. And African American radio was not only, you know, music, but it was public service announcements.
That's true.
They would tell you where the concerts were. They told you where the park.
Yeah,
You know, tickets were $5.50, $4.50, $3.50, $2.50.
Yeah. Wait. I want to.
And that's just the tax now.
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
ticket.
You know, imagine Earth, Wind and Fire, Rufus, Ohio Players, $8.50 to get in.
Right.
You know, that time is long gone.
Now it's like $200, $1.50.
Yeah, no, that was
Right.
$8.50 for everybody
of them.
on that
On that bill. That's right.
It was crazy. It was crazy. This is an interesting shot. This is backstage in 1974 also, and you've got 2 of the original Temptations and Stevie Wonder. And it was at Stevie's concert in '74 at the Inglewood Forum, and you've got Otis Williams on the right and Melvin Franklin on the left. And I think the only one left now is Otis.
Otis, right?
Yeah,
Right, Otis, right.
yeah, from the Temps, from the original one from the Temps. But, and as you can see, the brothers are styling. I mean, there is no question. I wanted to just bring up one of my favorite subjects. Not that she was more to me than you, Verdine, but you know, I mean,
Right. And you know, and Chaco's from Chicago too.
exactly.
Right, from
Exactly.
Chicago. You know,
She's wonderful.
and that was a great band. You know, Bobby Watson,
That's
Tony,
right. Yeah.
all those. Yeah, great artists.
You know, and the other thing is too, you know, you had this band, Rufus, you know, a young Rufus. I remember, you know, photographing them, and you know, one of their first gigs was at the Whiskey on Sunset, and it was wonderful, you know. But let's just zip on. Here's a portrait session I did for Soul Newspaper, and this is Donna Summer. And I wanted to show in this shot, I framed this specifically for this, and I wanted to show, you know, this was actually an enlargement from my proof sheet. And, you know, there's lots of people behind the scenes. You know, there's lots of people behind the scenes. You know, we sometimes marvel at what, you know, at what gets done, but you know, Dean will tell you, you know, there's a whole support group, you know, from not only the publicists and the stylists and the road crew, you know, and the stage manager, but there's a lot of people involved.
And it's a 24-hour thing.
Yes.
It never sleeps. When you sleep, they're working. When they're working, you sleep. It's a whole thing that people don't understand, you know, getting ready, to, you know, that's getting prepped before the shot.
Yeah.
And And that was probably the beginning of the session. You probably took
That's
40,
right.
50 shots.
That's right. I mean, this was
Right.
this was a for Soul newspaper. It was a cover session, and this was a situation where Casablanca actually said, and back then something that Verdine touched on, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't in place like it's in place now.
Right.
The record companies didn't have any, or were just slowly getting black publicists.
Right.
All right. And now you've got black publicists and publicity firms but back then there wasn't. So Casablanca wanted to put Donna on the cover, and they were going to give us what's called a handout from, I think the guys, Harry Langdon, who was big Hollywood photographer.
Right.
Did a lot of the big stuff. And, Regina said no. She said, and the reason I say no is not that Harry Langdon isn't wonderful, but she said, I want you to, if you want to reach my audience, you have to use my photographers and my writers. And what she did was she ended up empowering us. And just to drive the point home, later, after so they relented. They said, okay, you've got 20 minutes for the shoot. Donna shows up early. We were set up. Man, we were set up 2 hours early, 3 hours early. I think the shoot was for 3 o'clock. We're ready at noon. Who walks in but Donna Summer? And she looks and she sees the setup and the lights and the backdrop, and she says, "Oh, you brothers are serious." And my good friend Bobby Holland, who was working with me on this shoot, says, "Yes, we are, sister." And she stayed for 4 hours. All right, and we just had a wonderful time. But here's what else happened. Sure enough, when Ebony Magazine called her and asked her, did she have a photographer that she worked with, she said yes, Bruce Talamon. That Ebony cover became my first national cover.
Wow.
So it was because of Donna Summer that I got my first national cover. And and here we are. If you're gonna talk about R&B, you gotta talk about Soul Train, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in depth. But I love this photograph. I love this photograph because you've got James Brown. It's his first time on Soul Train, and you've got Don Cornelius, and with all of his hair.
Right,
And
but that was a cool afro, though, man.
oh baby, it was wasn't it working?
Well, now Don was a disc jockey out of Chicago, and he
That's
was on a station called WVON, and it's called The Voice of the Negro, and he was a great disc jockey, and he interviewed people like Martin Luther King. Before Soul Train, public service announcements, and he used to play at he was disc jockey at the Bull and the Bear on Fridays and Saturday nights in Chicago, because I was in the house band when I was 17 years old, and he would spin all the records. But he also was a great journalist.
Yes.
And then Soul Train started in Chicago upstairs on the 11th floor.
Yes.
And then he moved it out here, and of course the rest was history, because we had never ever seen a show like that where we had Bandstand,
Right.
like the American Bandstand.
Right, and Bandstand was wonderful, but
Right.
Don brought dance and culture into the homes. I mean, when you think about it, every Saturday, and for those of you who might be shaking your heads like, oh no, I don't know nothing about that. Yeah, you know where you were in front of that TV on Saturday morning. Your mother was telling you need to finish your homework or you need to do those chores.
Right.
But then I'm going to segue over into a little group called the Isley Brothers. And that is Ron Isley, who has invited the ladies up to dance. He has invited the ladies up to dance. And I tell you, right now there are some grandmothers and some mothers who are of a certain age who are still living off of that day when Ron Isley invited them to jump on the stage down in San Diego. We were down in we had driven down
That's
to
good.
San
That's a
Diego.
great one. I like that.
God. Oh, I think we might know who this is. I think we might know who this is. Let me
Yeah.
tell you something. No, before you say anything, I
Okay.
want to say this is the baddest band in the world. I mean it. This I had a lot of fun out there with this band, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And, you know, they gave me a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, Reese said, let's go, right?
Yeah, man. You know, and it all stemmed from a photo session that I did. That's going to come up in a minute. And it was, you know, they were coming to our little studio. The baddest band in the world was coming to our little studio. And, you know, we had the food, we had the music, you know, and they stayed. You know, we photographed in the studio. We even went out on the street, as I remember it. And they were game, and they had a good time. And then a couple of weeks later, I think, Monty
Right, my
called.
brother Monty, right.
Yeah,
right.
your brother called, and Monty was the road manager. And Monty said, you know, Reese liked what you did. He liked the way you handled yourself. And he says, we're getting ready to go to Europe and Egypt and Japan. Would you like to come? And that's when I fell down the rabbit hole.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We went to Egypt, right? We went to Japan. We went to Budokan.
Yeah.
And we went to Egypt before. Actually, I don't think there's any other African American group that's ever been to Egypt then and since.
Yeah, that's probably.
And that was before. Go ahead, Phil.
That's probably true. No.
Right.
I mean, I just wanted to put you levitating up there before I, you know, as you spoke. Tell us. Oh, he did. All right. Well, thank you.
He went there. What did he say?
I'll tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, about Lionel.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to know how did you levitate? I'm still trying to figure that out.
I am too.
Oh, you are too?
I am too.
Okay.
That show was done. That was a wonderful show that we called that the Tube Show. That was actually the show. We had, you know, done a lot of shows, of course, you know.
Right.
You know, because we were opening act. You know, we opened up for everybody for like 5 years, and that was actually the show that put us on the map. You know, we brought in Doug Henning to help us, and then we George Faison choreographed the show, and we rehearsed that show for like about 3 months. 3 months, and it was a lot of work, a lot of fun, but a lot of work. And we were in the middle of recording the I Am album, and actually we developed that show at the same time that Close Encounters had come out. At that time, Close Encounters was like busted loose. So the show kind of went along like, you know, Close Encounters, and then the opening of the show with the tubes, where these tubes would come down and we come in, the lights would go on. So that's how it started, and it was one of the first shows of really doing big production, you know, because big productions really cost a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of building of the stages, and it was groundbreaking, and for us, because, you know, we would record, you know, at night, then come back and rehearse, and we had like 2 hour, two different session rehearsals, started 11 o'clock to 2, then we take a break, then do the rehearse those shows, and they were done in stages. So it was a lot of fun doing them. Yeah.
And you know, you got to understand, they, you know, he said, you know, like, you know, George Faison, you know, so they were choreographed, right? They weren't bouncing around on a stage. They were choreographed. Everything went together, and there was, but yet they kept the spontaneity, which I loved, you know. And as a matter of fact, this is the photograph. This is the photograph that got me the gig. All right, I love this photograph.
We shot this right before the All in All album came out, right?
I think so. That's right. Yeah. And you know, when you're dealing with a bunch of people, right? One of the things you have to do is you also have to choreograph it. You have to stage it. You know, you just don't line them up and say, okay, I'll take your picture. Al in the back is on a ladder, right? Because I had to get him up higher, and he's got his hand on, on your shoulder there, and I took Philip on the right, and I turned his chair backwards, and then had him lean on the on the back of the chair, and I put Reese on a stool, and he got comfortable in a minute, right? And it just sort of everything fell into line. And one of the things I like about this photograph is that you guys were young and comfortable with each other, and you can just see it.
But actually, actually, if you look at some of the older photographs before that, this is the one where we became cool.
Oh, there's
Like
no
when you're
question.
when a band becomes like cool,
Right.
that's when we became cool.
They were
Because
very
we
cool.
had, we had traveled. We were in the middle of all of those rehearsals. When you shot those photos, and when we did your photo shoot that day, it was sort of like playground. It was like we were taking a break.
Yeah.
So remember, we were making a lot of noise that day.
Oh, yeah.
And we weren't even half getting through the session because we were laughing. We finally had a break. So the break was the photo shoot because because we had to leave
Right.
and go back to rehearsal.
Yeah.
And we had been traveling, So it was like, we were like actually starting to get kind of heavy, kind of serious,
Yeah, and this was for Soul newspaper, and one of the things I'll say is that I photographed. What happened was I came to the attention of the record companies, and then they and I must say that the African American artists at that time were not afraid to speak up and to ask, where are the black photographers, where are the black writers. And I think when we talk about this age of diversity, that's important, and I would hope that some of the younger musicians now would understand, that the power of their position.
Well, you know why? The basic stuff, because they didn't have makeup for us that would our skin tones. No,
Yeah,
for real.
Yeah, that's
For real. Now we have
that's-
commercials about different colors, skin tones. You only had like one tone back then.
one tone, and that was
And
it.
so you had to have like an African American photographer that understood your it's really a cultural thing, what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
This was the end of the session, and I just basically had him walk out of the frame, and it just sort of ended up kind of.
No, remember you were trying to get us to stop laughing because
Well,
we were
that
laughing,
too.
right? Because we were laughing so hard during the whole the shoot that Reese was in. Now we gotta get serious. Now we said,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, we
And
gotta
we
get
started
serious.
cracking up, and then we start over again, and then you would say, "Come on, guys, come on, guys." We said, "Okay, Bruce, hang on a second."
It was like
I gotta
herding
fix my
chickens.
shirt, and then Larry was always cracking jokes and all
yeah.
that stuff, and
Oh, yeah.
and Andrew was, remember there was a shot where Andrew, he looked serious,
Right.
But on one shot he put his hand over my face and
Yes.
did something, and we had to stop.
That's right. You've seen that proof sheet.
Right.
Boy.
That's right.
Boy, oh boy.
Right.
This is the front line, baby. This is the front line. And this is a mean front line. But I think you have a story about
Right. We were doing
about this
this-
choreography.
Right. Originally, the choreography was Al and myself in the middle of this groove, and Maurice came straight through and pushed his way in there. He's pushed his way and separated both of us.
Right.
And he just because originally it was just the two of us.
Yeah, back to back.
And he pushed his way, and that wasn't even in the choreography because in rehearsal George just had me and Al. That was at the Forum,
Right.
and that night Reese pushed his way through. I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was
He was
It was
Reese.
cool.
He
It was
was
his group,
Reese.
so he could do what he wanted to do. But no, so that's what happened. It was,
Yeah.
it was at the Forum that night.
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
Forum.
And again, one thing I'll say to young photographers is you gotta pay attention. You gotta pay attention. It's all around you, the good stuff. And back then, we had, you had black and white on your right side or your left side, whichever, and then you had color on the other side, and you had 3 or 4 cameras with different lenses, because now this was not the time to be changing your lens when you saw this happen. This was not the time. And someone once said to me, a famous photographer once said to me, if you see it, you missed it. So
Right.
And this is a Bruce Talamon self-portrait with two supporting pillars of the Earth, Wind, and Fire team. You have Maurice White on the right and Larry Dunn, the piano
Was
player.
that in Amsterdam?
What's that? That was in Amsterdam. That was in That was in Holland.
Yeah.
And I had just come. I just hooked up with you guys because you guys started, and then I joined you in Holland.
In Holland.
And then took.
And then we
took
went our
off
way.
from there.
Yeah.
And then we took off from there. Now tell me if this doesn't say rock star. All right, tell me that this doesn't say rock star. I'm sorry. I love me some Mick Jagger, but Mick gonna have a run on this one. He's got to run some to catch up with Reese.
Was that at the Forum too? Was it?
No, this was in I think this was at Budokan.
Budokan in Tokyo.
Yeah, in Tokyo. I mean, I'll tell you, I went from some small, wonderful, smoke-filled clubs on Crenshaw Boulevard. The
Right.
Total Experience,
Right.
Freddie Jet's Pied Piper, Mavericks Flat, the Soul Train Club for about 5 minutes that Don had, and the Crenshaw Palace. And I ended up, going to, like I say, Budokan.
And that was before, cell phone, CNN, and us going over. So they had to get accustomed to the culture. And we had to get accustomed to the culture, too.
That's right.
And now when you go, of course, really modern. And if you go to a hotel, the bathrobes are all the way down now. Then the bathrobes, because we were tall, stopped right here. It was a different thing. And not many groups of color went to Tokyo. It was a long way.
It's true.
It was a long way, and don't forget we had to ship all of that gear.
That's right.
People don't know to ship all of that stuff over there. Now it's normal. Now there's an infrastructure, as I said earlier. But back then you had to shift all of those, that stage. Frank Scheidbach, our stage manager at the time, did a great job. And he was great. And to get all of those guitars and drums and I couldn't imagine what freight was, at that particular time.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah.
Again, rock star. All right, we'll just leave it at that.
I gave Reese that shirt.
You did?
Yeah, because I have a blue one.
Oh, okay.
I did. Yeah, I gave him that shirt. Yeah.
Why do I know that? Why?
I gave him
Why?
that
Of
shirt,
course,
yeah,
of
yeah.
course you do. I've always liked this shot because he is about 4 feet off the ground.
Right.
That's a hell of a jump.
That's a hell of a job.
You'd watch, and some nights you get lucky. This was in Montserrat.
Right.
This was in the West Indies.
Right.
Sir George Martin. Do people know who Sir George Martin was? Is
The Beatles producer.
The Beatles producer.
Right,
And
right.
he created this wonderful studio in
The West
at
Indies.
Montserrat, in
Montserrat.
the West Indies, the island. It's no longer there. One of the hurricanes wiped it out.
That's right, the Hurricanes.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
But Stevie Winwood had recorded there. Fleetwood Mac had recorded there. I think Stevie did. The Beatles, the Police.
That video, the Police, everything.
Right.
That's where they shot it in
Right.
that room in there.
And so Earth, Wind, and Fire came.
Yeah, we originally met George Martin on the Sgt. Pepper movie set.
Right.
And they were doing this, Sgt. Pepper, and then he didn't have time to work with us, and we decided to. He said, "Well, you guys can do something, put something together," and it was "Got to Get You My Life," and of course, it was the biggest song in the whole movie. And then after that particular, this was after all the commercial hits that we were having, and we wanted to just get away and record in Montserrat, and that was the Faces record.
That's right.
The double, and we stayed out there for like about 2 months, and where we, had a chance to record and get away, because we did the same thing on Open Our Eyes, and that's where the world. We went up to Colorado in the mountains where we were, out of the city. We could concentrate and kind of connect with each other.
Tell me about. Share with us. What's it like to record? What happens? Just give me a little taste. You know?
Everybody's thing is different.
Right.
You know, recording is all subjective. Every group records differently. Every artist record differently. But what it's like long hours. That's what it's like. You know, and you don't know. You know, you have an idea what you're gonna do, and then it just keeps growing, and the thing that you think is gonna be a single is not the single. You know, you never really know how. You know on the way that a record could be really good, but you don't really know until it's really all the way done, until it's totally finished.
Right.
You know, and then you know it's very scientific, and you have to have a leader, you have to have a producer, which Maurice was the leader and the producer. He set the direction.
And what's his name's over in the corner there?
George Massenburg.
George
You have to have an
Massenburg.
incredible engineer, George Massenburg, who not only did us, but did Fleetwood Mac. He did a lot of great records, and he invented a lot of gear. He invented a lot of outboard gear, you know, sounds, and so that's what it's like to record a record. It's very tedious. It's not as spontaneous as it sounds on a record. The idea is to do it so it can sound spontaneous and have sonically, you know, great. We were all in the beginning. We used to cut a record really fast, but as time went on, it would take us a while. You know, we would actually sometimes be in the studio like a year and a half working on a record. So it's tedious, and you have to have the chemistry with the musicians too.
Yeah, and you know, it was wonderful to watch. I mean, a number of great musicians came through
That's
to
right.
accompany you guys.
Right.
And you know, not only the Phoenix Horns, who I've got a picture of.
Oh, you can finish the
Yeah, I've got
Phoenix.
them,
Oh,
I got
okay.
them in
Okay.
there. But you know, just being around to see that, and again, you know, I learned something a long time ago. It was real simple. It was stay out of the way and don't mess up the vibe, and you will be fine. You know, and that's important. This is one of my favorite of that time, and you know, Reese. It looks like Reese is playing air guitar there, but what he's doing is, you know, he's going over, you know, a little part that he wants to talk to Al about, and Al's listening, you know, and
Well,
there was
Reese would do that with everybody.
Right.
After we cut the basic, like I said, everybody's recording process is different. Our process was that we lay all the tracks out,
right,
mistakes and all, and then Reese would get together with everybody to go over their parts. Like he went over parts with Larry, myself, going over parts with Sweets, to have everything laid out on the track. Because you have to cut the basic track, because you might do 3, 4, 5 guitar parts. You know, I might do 4 or 5 bass parts, and then we would punch in, go back over, and keep everything, you know. And then as they start to mix and things like that, to hear the mistakes that you were gonna make. Now, in my case, I didn't actually make that many mistakes. Sometimes Reese would say, "Oh man, I'm waiting." He said, "I was waiting to hear you make some mistakes." I didn't make any. You know, that many. You know, I didn't make that many. You know,
and that's because you're a professional.
no, I'm. You know, well, you know, knowing the songs and him. You know, Reese is playing drums on it, so it was actually easier. You know, to work with him. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. There's the young photographer in Mexico with some gear. I've got a Leica M4 on my neck, and the reason I have Nikons. Now on my right, you'll see a bag, and you'll see a 300 f2, a 300 millimeter f2.8 long lens, and then you'll see in front hanging off is a Minolta spot meter, and because you know you couldn't go up and move Verdine over and say I need to take a light reading. The 1 degree spot could allow you to be here and then take the reading, so I wouldn't have to go up.
Okay.
You know, on the thing. And Don Myrick took that photograph.
Don took that. Sweet.
Yeah,
Okay,
Don Myrick
Our
took that
saxophone player.
photograph.
Sax.
Yeah, but as you can see, I was having a grand time. Now, I will say this: the Leica, I loved the Leica because it was quiet. It was very quiet, and you could, you know, you wanted to stay out of the way, but you had to get close. You did have to get close. This is a photograph I also love. because look at these robes. Look at as a friend of mine once said, the garments. You know, left to right we've got Satterfield. We've got who's that? That's
Ralph.
Ralph, and then we've got Don Myrick in the back, and then
Rom Lee.
we've got Rom Lee's all the way in the back,
Trumpet
and
player.
the trumpet player, and then up front we've got in front of Rom Lee we've got Al, and then we've got Philip, and who am I missing? And
Johnny.
then Reese, and then you're behind Reese, and then we've got Johnny, and then we've got Larry, and we've got Freddie. Let me tell you, this is a badass band.
And Don, and Reese went to college together.
Yeah.
And then Satterfield was my bass guitar teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And Reese and Sat were session players at Chess Records. So all those hits on Chess, they made them.
That's right.
And then Sat, was my teacher from the time I was like 14 to, my whole life.
Yeah, these are, and I will just give you a heads up on this. These are Bill Witten costumes.
Right.
Bill Witten, the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful designer, designed these costumes. What was it like to work in these though? Because they look great, but
They were heavy, but they were heavy weight-wise.
Yeah.
But Bill was very unique. He made clothes for us, the Jacksons, the
Yeah.
Commodores, and he was great. Actually, that's kind of like reminding you of Black Panther a little bit,
Yeah, that's what somebody else said.
So the precursor of Black Panther, and because it's kind of like the same kind of concept.
Right.
And but no, the Bill was really a great artist, very unique.
Yes.
And his assistant was a young man named Lewis Wells,
Lewis
who
Wells.
we talked about, and Lewis just recently passed away last month.
Right.
And he was our guy, and Lewis was with us for like 40 years.
Lewis started out being sent out to repair, as I understand it, to repair the garments
That's right.
if you moved the wrong way and
Right.
stretched it out a little too far.
Right.
He'd get the sewing machine going and
Right.
get it fixed. He
On
was
the
wonderful.
road.
On the road.
And actually, recently I just found out that Lewis, this was the first tour we did this summer without Lewis, and then his mother, she requested from us, his sewing machine, which we just sent back to her as a memento.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He was great. They were great artists.
Yeah. Here's a photograph that has sort of become not only timeless, but it's been fascinating sort of watching the growth of this photograph. And I say that because it wasn't a total accident. I mean, I'm not going to say that, but this photograph was not planned. Now, I will say this. For those of you who there are some of you who may remember, the pyramids are not stacked up like this, right? They are in a straight line. And I remember when we went we were leaving Paris. We were on our way to Egypt, and I cornered Reese and said, "Look, I got this great idea. I wanna do a shot at sunrise, and I want to have the band, with the sun coming up over
He said, yeah, right.
pyramids." And he said, "Well, this sounds great, and we're going to do it, and it's going to be fabulous. And what time are we going to do it?" And I said, "Well, we've got to be in place at 4:30. Well, now, you see, you got to be in place at 4:30 because if you're there and the sun's coming up, guess what? You've missed it. So you've got to be there before the sun." He wasn't going for it. He says, "Can we do it around 1 o'clock?" Well, that shot the hell out of a sunrise.
Yeah.
But it was Dean, Reese, myself, and Bafa.
Right, Leonard Smith, our
Leonard
road
Smith.
manager. Is everybody comfortable? Nobody, it's not boring. Everybody's cool. Everybody's good.
Everybody all right for a
Okay.
minute?
All right.
All
Okay.
right.
There was a.
Sorry, because we'll start reminiscing, and y'all will be like,
I know.
hey.
This was in February,
Right.
and it was 99 degrees in the Sahara Desert.
I want to say it was 100, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was right in Cairo, and this was before the peace treaty was signed between Israel and Egypt.
Huh.
We went there at a really interesting time.
Yeah.
Because remember we had to stay really close knit with each other.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and we went out in the afternoon with this, and that's why Reese had that umbrella, because it was
Well,
90 degrees too.
You're right. He stole my umbrella.
Right.
What happened though was, but now back to the photograph just for a second. I want to say that. So now remember, the pyramids are in a straight line. So that means you've got to drive around to get them looking like this, and then you use a long lens to compress the photograph. This is all before Photoshop. Okay, and look, yeah, I'm fabulous. Ask me, I'll tell you. But seriously, you know, you've got to think. You know, that's the thing. There's a wonderful photographer who told me, yeah, man, there's a lot of people walking around with cameras, but there's only a few photographers. And I would like to think that maybe on a couple of days I had it in order, but so now we've got it. We've got it all lined up. I take photographs of Reese. I take photographs of Dean. I take photographs of Reese and Dean together. It's great. We got it. Well, now it's time to go home because it's getting hotter. The sun's,
Right.
coming up higher in the sky.
And those guys, the tour guys, were hustling us too.
Oh yeah, and they were hustling us.
American Joe.
Yeah, we
You know
want.
what
They
I mean?
wanted us.
They wanted
to,
that right. Everything was.
It was.
We won camels, right?
Yeah.
We
We
had to
were
take
on
the camels. We had
It
to
was
bright
wonderful.
candles out there, right?
Right. And so we're ready to leave, and the wind's howling, the sand is
That's
in your
right, the
underwear,
sand, right.
It's hot, you're sweaty. It's time to go.
Yeah, it wasn't
All
like
right?
It wasn't like Raiders of the Lost Ark, It
No,
was like
it was
really.
not. So now
It was like 4 black guys in the desert.
yes, there we were.
That's what it was. 4 black guys in the desert.
And so now, Reese is leaving, and he takes my umbrella, and he starts to walk back toward the van, and that's when I saw it, and I said, Reese, I did something I'd never done before. I yelled at Maurice Wright, and I said, look, don't, and he looks at me, and I said, just turn around. I'll tell you about it later. Walk towards the pyramids. And this became his favorite shot.
Mm-hmm.
And after he died, it went all over the world, because he was coming home.
Well, I always knew when I saw this shot, when we did Reese's ceremony and, homegoing, said that this was going to be the shot. I always knew that this was going to, be the shot. And yeah, it was heavy. Even when I see it now, it's heavy, And now we sell it now at the shows, and it's amazing. Now we have like kids who are like 7 or 8 years old wearing his T-shirt, and they don't even know who he is really. It's kind of spooky, But it's just the vibe. But that was February. That was February. We was out there in February. It was 90 degrees, man.
Yeah, we had a good time. Oh yeah, there's the young photographer again in the middle. You might know who the guy is on the right, the extreme right. But yeah, I photographed him too.
It was
Moving
nice,
on.
right.
Moving on. For the ladies, Al Green, his signature. I mean, this was on Soul Train. These are Soul Train dancers reaching out, and nobody could do a show like Al. I mean, Al would wind them up, and he would get them going.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I wanted to show in the book. I wanted to show what the artist has to give. This is, this was at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion,
Mm-hmm.
and he's collapsing at the door to his dressing room. I mean, you guys got to understand, these folks work. They work. This ain't playtime. There is a certain professionalism and just love for the music. And, again, I did the book. Maybe I could have, maybe I captured a little bit of this, to share and for people to see. Because this is stuff, that most times people don't see that. They see everybody cleaned up. Now you've got publicists who say, well, let them change out of their clothes.
Right.
And I don't know. Anyway, you may know who these folks are. This is 1976. This is the Jacksons. They had been to a photo session for Soul newspaper, and they had just left Motown. They were now on Epic Records. Let's see what else we got. And all I can say is this is the inside of my studio. And when Michael walked on the backdrop,
Right.
it was like you turned on the record player.
Right.
You didn't need any music. He would start to dance, and it was like you wound him up, and it was fabulous. I included this shot. Because look at the eyes. Look at the little girls. Look at the young women. They're there to see the Jacksons. This is in the Haight-Ashbury area,
Right.
and up north, up in San Francisco. But their noses are pressed against the glass. And again, pay attention. It's all around you. If you call yourself a photographer, it's not just what the assignment was. You've got to just look and see, because that was just wonderful. Now,
Well, as I said earlier, before everybody crossed over, these were the audiences that knew all the words and all of
Yes.
and were at the shows and would line up the night before.
Yes.
Like you go to the Apple Store now, you line up before a phone. They were lining up then to go see them.
they were lining up.
It
Yeah.
was and they would listen to African American radio.
And it was an event. And one other thing, just to be clear, folks dressed. And the sisters had their hair done, and their
It was a cultural experience. It's culture.
It was wonderful.
It was culture. It was what we were, it was culture. It was like from concerts to the church, going to see the Jacksons, going to see Miles Davis,
That's right.
It was culture because it was our culture, and it was our people that were making music for the whole world. Just making music for the whole world.
That's true. Now, it did get a little ugly because they loved him to death. They were loving him to death, and well, as it ended up, those girls who were watching, they were pushed through the glass. Nobody was hurt,
Right.
but also that showed, just how it could get out of hand in the frenzy, of the moment. It was something.
Right.
And,
Sly, yeah.
and here we have.
Oh yeah.
Here we have Bobby Womack. You never gonna see this lineup again. Bobby Womack, Sly Stone, and B.B. King. And they were at In Concert. Remember In Concert? Dick Clark's In Concert.
Right.
They had that. They had the Midnight Special.
Don Kirshner's rock concert.
Yeah.
Right. You had all right.
Don
Right.
Kirshner's rock concert.
Right. You had all that stuff. Right.
And Sly was performing, and Bobby was, or rather, BB was performing, and Bobby Womack was there, and he was performing, and it was just wonderful, and it was one of those things where they said, Bruce, take a picture, and I got it, and I'm just so happy I did.
That's great.
And this is Sly times 3. This is when you get bored sometimes, you got to kick the camera, I say, and so you do a triple exposure and you see what happens, and maybe you'll get lucky.
Great.
And I got 3 different expressions.
How are we doing on time? Are we good?
Are we good? Everybody all right? We cool?
We good?
'Cause we can go
Because
home.
we've been talking about an hour.
We got about 5 minutes more.
Okay.
Oh,
Then we'll do
10
question and
minutes?
answer, right?
We're gonna okay. Well, we're gonna zip through, and this is B.B. King, and who we got? This is LTD. Notice the wonderful accommodations. This is you'll notice that the ceiling is falling, and now I threw this in because you got to understand this is Rufus Thomas. He has brought his 45 to KGFJ,
Oh, wow.
right? And that was a big deal, right? To promote your record. See, and this is what people had to do back then.
And it was a 45.
And it was a 45, Daddy.
That was before 8-track. Before
But
8-track.
they're look, it's okay. This is in front of Pink's Hot Dogs. This is Johnny Taylor. He too has been promoting his record, but we had to stop at Pink's, and he did not drop a bit of that chili dog on his attire.
On them Gators.
On them Gators, you dig? And this is Slick Rick. This is Slick Rick and 100,000 people at the Coliseum. And sometimes it gets a little wild.
Oh, okay.
You know,
yeah.
folks take the clothes off.
Right. That was before. Right. Right.
Speechless.
Right.
Moving on.
That's George.
That's George.
George.
And George was also, look, you got to understand something. I'm having a ball, okay? I got to photograph two of the baddest bands in the world, plus a few other folks.
Right.
But, you know, between Earth, Wind, and Fire and Parliament-Funkadelic, I was in heaven.
They were great. Ooh, they were wow. They were great. They were great.
And try wrestling 13 folks onto a 9-foot backdrop.
Bootsy, yeah.
Bootsy, another badass bass player.
Great.
Yeah, and then we slow down and we got Tom Bell and the Spinners. Felipe Wynn. I went everywhere. This is on the Dinah Shore show. Okay.
And Tom, for those who don't, Tom did the stylistics. He did the Delphonics.
Yeah.
You know, he was great. I mean, really great.
When
Tom
you
was great.
understand
really great.
who Tom Bell was.
Tom was great.
You know, wrote some wonderful stuff. And there's Felipe Wynn getting ready to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to a wonderful lady in the crowd. Yeah, he would jump into the crowd and dance and sing, and it was fabulous. You can't go anywhere without the dramatics, all right? And this brother presenting them, his name was Champagne. And every band, all those bands of that era, had a cat who would present them. You know, James Brown had somebody.
Right.
He held his cape.
Right.
Al Green had somebody.
Right.
You know, and when L.J. Reynolds saw this picture, he says, "Bruce, I don't remember the cat's real name, but we called him Champagne. He was our DJ and our not stylist. He took care of the clothes."
Yeah, but remember I said earlier that there was no infrastructure, so everybody just came and
everybody
did what
did
they
everything.
did. You might have a guy who's the road manager doing lights.
There you go. There you
Curtis,
go.
yeah, that was
And you
great
got to
too.
talk about Curtis Mayfield, you know.
Out of Chicago.
Out of Chicago. Wonderful. Stevelyn Morris and Denise Williams and Susie Green. Again, just a wonderful time. This is the cover of the book. This is Bruce Talamon getting bored and kicking the camera again. What I wanted to do was try to paint the ectochrome on the film, and Stevie would shake his head from side to side, and I had gotten my assignment because look, you got to get your assignment out the way, all right? Because if you don't come back with the shot, you will not be there next time.
Right. And this is the opening of the book, right?
And that was the opening of the book.
Yeah.
Stevie and Minnie. Stevie and a young Denise Williams and Reggie McBride, I think, on bass.
Right.
Wonder Love. And that's, I just went blank. Sang Ordinary Pain, the refrain. I'll think of it in a minute. But now we come to another picture. And Dean, I want you to look up there and look at the guy in the left corner looking over at Stevie.
Oh,
And
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I was there that night. Oh,
yes,
wow.
you were.
Wow.
This
Where was this at? Where was this?
This was Stevie's birthday party.
Right.
This was Stevie's birthday party.
Right.
24 years old. And
I think Maurice was there, too.
And Minnie Ripperton is
over
is
there.
off in the corner.
Wow.
Yeah, man. That I wanted to surprise you with that one because
That's kind of cool. You got to give me that one. I got to have that one for my trophy room.
He's a very good collector of my work.
Was this what is it, Century City?
This was at the no, baby.
What was
This was
this
at
at?
the Speakeasy.
Right.
Yes.
In West Hollywood.
And we got out of there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, the Speakeasy,
We
right.
got out of there at 4 o'clock in the morning because
Right.
Stevie wanted to play.
Right, the Speakeasy.
Remember?
That was right.
He was set
and
up.
It was and the Speakeasy was in a neighborhood.
That's right. That's right.
Right, and the police would try to shut it down, but then they'd go in to the club and they would be partying.
It was wonderful.
Speakeasy.
This is an important picture. Steveland has just given the tapes for Songs in the Key of Life to Berry Gordy. All right, and I just love this photograph. Miss Ross in a Bob Mackie gown in Las Vegas, Caesar's Palace.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Marvin Gaye. And let me just ease through these. This is we were in Malibu, and he says, I know where we can go to lunch. And we went to his mama's house. And we had there's nothing better than day old leftover Thanksgiving dinner,
Right.
reheated. And his mother said, baby, you can take a few pictures, but you got to sit down and eat. And we ate well. That was Frankie, his brother, with his mom. And, she had the same overcooked green beans like my mother and the mashed potatoes and the Wonder Bread. Look at the Wonder Bread on that table.
Wow.
That's right. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. This is
Hidden Hills, right?
This is
His ranch, Hidden Hills.
His ranch,
Right,
yeah, and actually Topanga, I think. Yeah.
Topanga?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Marvin lived the life of a rock star, and as Reese did also. Reese had a wonderful. Remember the
Right, Carmel, right?
In Monterey, or no, in Carmel.
Carmel.
Yeah, in Carmel
Right.
Valley. Reese had a beautiful spread up in the Carmel Valley. You cannot talk about R&B without talking about Ashford and Simpson.
Right.
This goes on, and I've only got 80 pictures here.
That's right.
Billy Preston.
Billy. Yeah, Billy was great. Yeah.
Billy Preston, and
Who's
does
that?
anybody know who this is? Mary Clayton.
Oh, right. Mary Clayton.
Mary Clayton, one of the baddest background singers, and just singer in her own right. And that night they tore the house down at the Total Experience.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Question and answers.
Oh yeah.
That's Bill Whitten. Right.
That's Bill Whitten.
That's Bill.
We're almost done.
That's Bill.
Let's see. That's Eddie Kendricks in a Bill Whitten costume. And up there's Larry Dunn and another model.
That was the photo shoot for the I Am, right?
Shoot. Yeah.
For I Am, right.
And look at the garment. Look at the garment. Look at the detail. I don't know how you guys could be cool and work.
That looked like Fashion Week or something.
And then
That's Reese, right?
I think last but not least, you can't talk about the music without Don Cornelius, the guy who brought it all. And we were on Soul Train. We had a grand time. Marvin sang "Let's Get It On." Some original Soul Train dancers showed up at the Grammy Museum.
Mm-hmm.
A young Teddy Pendergrass in the middle with Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. The Soul Train line. Oh, Gil Scott-Heron and the Midnight Band.
Oh, wow, Gil Scott.
Laughing. The Commodores. This is the thumb of a prominent bass player, Louis Johnson.
Oh, Louis. Oh, wow.
Louis Johnson. He had shredded his thumb, but he was having a ball.
That's kind of nasty, Bruce.
Ooh, yeah, it's nasty.
Huh? It was cutty.
Teddy Pendergrass, a little older. He had just left Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. LaBelle, rehearsing, working it, listening to the sound check, singing. We commandeered a car, and I wrote Patty on the car.
Wow.
You had to do stuff. Her feet hurt, she told me.
Okay.
Natalie Cole, a young Chaka Khan on the roadie cases, and we close with Bill Withers.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
But thank you. Questions?
We'll do it like
We're gonna
maybe like.
A couple of questions.
You want to we'll do 5 and we'll have it. Okay.
You know.
We were going to do 10, but it's getting later. We'll do 5.
Yeah, we don't want to keep you all up.
We got to get out of here.
My gosh, man.
You can go to them, huh? Where the mic is, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I don't need to stand? Okay. Y'all make me nervous. Okay. Thank you for
No,
coming
man,
out.
you out there. We up here.
Well, hey, thank you for coming out and doing this. Primarily had a question about your portrait sets. Do you typically shoot? Because I try to always learn more about another photographer. I try to examine their light sources and how they're setting up and everything. Do you typically use just one light source for every single setup? Because that kind of seemed like for your portrait setups, you would just use one light source.
Brother, we were poor. I mean, for Earth, Wind, and Fire, I had 2 lights. At first, we had no lights, and we would take you out. We would take you out in the shade, and because no direct sun, but in the shade, and we'd shoot. We weren't doing fill flash. We weren't doing any of that. And then we convinced Regina to purchase some lights, and she bought us a Norman 800 and 2 heads, and we wore that out. We'd put it in my little. I had a little Fiat, and I would put that in the trunk. But that's what we did.
Who's next? Next. It's number 2.
Number 2.
3 more to go.
Hi there.
What was the story behind the film That's the Way of the World? It seemed to have come and gone really quickly.
In a short, it was a soundtrack to the movie That's the Way of the World, and it was the biggest record of our career. But the movie was a flop, actually. Actually, all the movies we've done have been flops, except the music that was good. You know what I mean?
The music was
The
happening.
music was happening. You know what I mean? But it was a movie that was done by Six Shore, who produced Superfly, and it was about a band. It was Harvey Keitel's first movie of his career. And on the side of the album, it sits from the soundtrack. But the movie was not great. We didn't care. It was our first movie, and
we had a good time.
we were great for guys who couldn't act. We were really great. But it was the big breakthrough movie breakthrough record for us, and that was the genesis in a nutshell of the movie. Next, 3.
We got somebody else.
Hi, Verdine. Please tell me that you still have all the costumes from the Earth, Wind, and Fire's tours and stuff.
Yeah, we got a lot of them, but I have a lot of stuff personally, though.
Okay.
I have tons of stuff personally,
Right.
And I can get in I can still get in a few of those things,
Okay.
too. 3,
My
4,
question for-
I'm sorry.
My
go
question for the photographer is that how can you encourage some of the young people to do that when the price of the equipment for the cameras is extremely expensive? Like these lenses is thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh, I know. It's I have said to a few camera reps that it's criminal, but they've basically ignored me. Look, if you're gonna do it, you got to be all in. You've got to figure a way. I had used equipment, a lot of used equipment. I've still got it to this day. I don't think I ever bought any. Well, no, I did buy something actually new, but even the used equipment is crazy in the prices. But now you don't need 5 cameras. You basically need 2. One is a backup, because see now with digital, you're shooting. All of a sudden, you're shooting color, and then you can convert it to black and white,
Right.
which I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
2 more.
Next.
I'm sorry, 2 more. Then we're gonna wrap.
Yes,
we're gonna
sir.
Wrap this up.
Okay, this guy's a ringer. I think I know who this is.
Hey, Bruce. Hey, Verdine. I'm just curious. I didn't see any white artists. Can you tell me, was there any kind of restrictions from the record companies or other media?
What do you mean you didn't see any white artists?
I didn't see you photographing. I didn't see any photographs of white artists. And I know that you photographed a whole
absolutely.
landscape.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, because Bobby Holland back at that time would rail about the apartheid system that was going on in record companies and so forth.
Oh, there's no question.
So I just wanted you to talk about race a little bit, if you could, or the cultural
Well-
milieu of race at that time and how.
Well, let me chime in on it. I think just to kind of cut to the chase of the culture thing, this book is specifically about African American pop artists, as I said earlier, and that doesn't take anything anyway from any of the other pop artists and things like that. And I think in terms of race is always part of every conversation that we're having right now, you know, and I think at the end of the day, the music really was for everybody, for every color, you know what I mean? And then we'll get to part two. We're gonna come back and do this, but I just kind of like wanted to cut to the chase, you know what I mean? And we'll finish this next time, you know.
Well, I'll just say that, and you know, it was a situation where, as I said, some of the black artists actually understood the power of their position, and so they did ask. I mean, the fellow who's asking these questions is a good friend of ours, Todd Gray,
Right.
who Michael Jackson asked for on numerous occasions, and did a lot of work with Michael. I met Todd at a Curtis Mayfield concert, right? Wow. With you and Neil together, but out in the Santa Monica Civic. But one of the things that I'll just say, because this is an extended conversation that we really don't have time for,
Right.
unfortunately, but you know, it was segregated. White photographers didn't really come out and photograph like the dramatics. They'd photograph, you know, Michael Jackson. They'd photograph Diana. They'd photograph, no, they wouldn't even photograph Gil Scott-Heron. You know, so it was when you, and again, you know, I could go deeper into it. And again, it's a conversation that, you know, over a couple of beers, you know, I
Right.
think
Right.
we could
And as
we
and,
could
and,
do
and as
that.
and
But
as an artist, as the artist who was on the front lines of all of this stuff, you know, we very rarely got great reviews. You know what I mean? There's a review from Rolling Stone magazine, 1978, was a scathing review.
wait, if you even got
in it. You know what I mean? So I mean, you know, so you know, we were on the front lines of all that stuff, man. You know, when you're up there, you know, you're subjected to getting eggs thrown at you. You get subjected to a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
And to survive that and come on the other end,
yeah.
that's a long way from where we started. So we'll finish this over some ginger ale.
No,
one
thank
more,
you.
and we got to wrap this
We
up.
got-
We got to end this.
Yeah.
Verdine,
Last-
I have a question about your half-brother Maurice and his music in particular. I remember the solo album he released in the 80s that had a few hits, was well received. And I'm curious, I've forgotten the timing of his Parkinson's diagnosis. What would we have seen from him as a solo artist had he continued in good health?
Well, I just think as a solo artist and as a producer, you know, you would have seen more. You know, when anybody gets any disease, you know, no disease is fun. You know, and I was there with him all the way to the end. So although it you know, you can, you know, people talk about it, but it's not fun watching that from anybody. You know what I'm saying? So to project what he would have been, I already know he'd have been great. But to watch that, you know, if you know, like if you have a relative or somebody you know who was healthy and all of a sudden is afflicted with a disease that can't be cured, that's like heavy. That's not like a movie.
Yeah.
And there's no music behind it. There's no rolling of the credits. It's just heavy. You know what I'm saying? So who knows, but I know it would have been great. You know what I mean? So on that note,
yeah.
this was fun.
Thank you.
We'll do this
Thank you.
again.
Yes.
Thank you for
I just
coming.
wanted to say thank you to Claudia. Where is she? She's
Over here.
Okay. And I wanted to say thank you to Verdine for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Brucey.
You know, and this was, look, this whole thing. This is a celebration of the music. It's a celebration of an aesthetic. It's a celebration of a time that I like to say lasted way past the midnight hour and will never come again.
And what I'm proud about this book and proud about our career, that it cuts through every gender, race, color, money, fame, all that stuff that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. I like that it's timeless and that everybody really loves the work and the book, because the thing that I'm proud of about this band that we've done, people come up and they thank us for making this music regardless of what color they are, regardless of what kind of jobs they have. You know what I mean? And we have people now that already are in their will saying, we want to hear That's the Way the World when I die. And so, you know, so that's a good place to be. So thank you all for
So there
coming.
we are.
All righty.
Thank you for
Good
coming
stuff.
out.
So please join us in the lobby. We have coffee, tea, and cookies, and books for sale. And come say hello.